Hey everybody! So, I thought I'd do another video from what I guess is officially my vlog chair, my out-of-character chair, my OOC chair, whatever you want to call it. Doubtless the comment section is probably already filled up with tons of comments regarding my new haircut rather than the actual subject matter because, well, the topic of hair seems to be a big deal with me, but then again, considering how long it used to be. So, if you keep up with my Twitter, which is something I do recommend you do, at KHFMcAwesome, because I frequently post there about when I've finished another episode or episodes of whatever anime I'm currently reviewing, so you can catch up with my progress on what I'm watching there. So yeah, if you've been keeping up with my Twitter, you know that I finally finished The Legend of Korra. I'm a bit late to the party, but better late than never, right? And I know that the ending of The Legend of Korra did cause a, no reference intended, great divide. Okay, maybe a little reference intended. A great divide amongst the fan base. So, I basically thought I'd give my thoughts on what I thought of the series overall and the big twist at the end. As such, I am going to be going into spoiler territory, though I imagine some of you have already had the big plot twist spoiled for you with how it was all over the internet. But I'm going to give a spoiler warning, so I am going into Legend of Korra spoilers here, so if you haven't watched the series yet, I recommend turning away now, because there's going to be spoilers. So yeah, I'll get to that big point a bit later on, but I just wanted to give my overall thoughts on Korra as a whole, as a franchise. I really have loved Legend of Korra from start to finish. I have absolutely adored it. It was a simply spectacular, just beautiful, well done series. I honestly, personally, this is just my opinion, I personally feel that it was every bit as good as Last Airbender / Legend of Aang, which it was called over here. I think it was every bit as good as that. It's just that it's good in a different way. It does something different with the Avatar universe. It explores different themes and stuff to what Aang's era did, which was a good thing. This is something I really praise the series for. It didn't try to piggyback off of Last Airbender too much. It was its own thing. It's not required to have watched Last Airbender to appreciate this series. You'll just get some of the older throwbacks and references more. And that was a good move. That was a good move, making this its own thing, not trying to redo Last Airbender, because Last Airbender was Last Airbender. You know, there's no reason to redo it. There's nothing wrong with it. So, they decided to just make Legend of Korra. And that, like I say, I've repeated the same point, which I tend to do, Aspie. That was a good move, and I highly praise the creators for doing that. The shift to slightly more mature themes was a good idea as well. You kind of grew the show up with its audience, because obviously people who watched Last Airbender when they were young, you know, they're obviously a bit older now and have had to deal with these actual themes and issues in their own life, so the things that they can relate to more. So you grew the program along with the audience, which again, really good move. Really good move. And the way these more mature themes were handled was really well done as well, and I'll get more into that in a bit, but they actually, though it's a cartoon about characters who can bend the elements and whatnot, the themes that it had present in it were actually done in a very realistic way, I felt. A very realistic and mature way, and the way they were taught they were good lessons for young people. But that is nothing new to the franchise. I mean, Last Airbender had a lot of themes that were handled in a very realistic way as well. It's just, like I say, with Korra, the themes are a bit more mature now. Not that Aang's era didn't have mature themes, because it did. It's just there's more of them, and they're more overt in Legend of Korra. Don't know why I'm gesturing to invisible eras here. It's such a shame that Nickelodeon really didn't want to support this series, because honestly, it's the best thing to come out of them since, well, since Last Airbender, really. Come on, let's be honest with ourselves. It was true. Nickelodeon weren't really down with supporting Korra. I mean, I've read in places that they didn't like the idea of Korra being female, being a woman, until they saw footage of the first episode and then were like, oh yeah, it's okay. And there's also the fact that they took it off TV broadcast after one night where ratings weren't as good as they had been in the past, but In the case of Korra, I imagine they were still pretty decent ratings. Just not... Okay, so they weren't as good for one day. They were probably still pretty decent, but I just get the feeling that Nickelodeon, like, you know, not wanting to support a cartoon that has a strong female protagonist, heaven forbid, they were just waiting. They were waiting. They were like, you slip up once, and we're taking it off the air. And that's basically what happened. But it turned out to be their biggest mistake, because honestly, I think Korra only went up in terms of story quality after it was taken off of TV airing. So you take down the best cartoon to come out of you in years, but you still whore out SpongeBob. For shame. But my friend Afro Otaku actually made a good point about Legend of Korra. He said it was too good for Nickelodeon, and I agree with you, mate. I agree. You're too good for Nickelodeon, Korra. You don't need them. Well, kind of do, but you're too good for them. Hey, check this out. I loved Korra so much that I actually got the art book of book 1. This is actually, this marks the first case of me getting the art book of, well, any kind of franchise that I like. It was just that, I just enjoyed it that much. I don't have an obsession, I swear. I'm joking. While Last Airbender had some really good villains to it, I would make the argument that Legend of Korra actually had far more interesting villains than Last Airbender did, or at least far more three-dimensional villains, with the exception of Unalaq. Although in saying that, unlike what I've seen from the majority of the fanbase, I personally didn't dislike Unalaq, but he probably was the weakest of all the villains. I will consent to that. I honestly personally think that people are far too harsh on Book 2 in general. Yeah, there are a couple of cliches here and there, but there's plenty to like about it. There's plenty of good things in Book 2. Hey, Book 2 introduced Varric, so you've got to give it credit for that. But back to my original point, I actually would argue that Legend of Korra has far more three-dimensional villains than Last Airbender did. Because let's face it, like, Fire Lord Ozai, he was evil for evil's sake. He was just drunk on power. Whereas with the villains in Korra, with the exception of Unalaq, who was also just evil for evil's sake, most of them had a method behind their madness. You know, you don't agree with what they're doing, but you do get where they're coming from. The best, of course, being Zahir. Zahir was just such a well-written villain. I really enjoyed what they did with Zahir. He was just such a well-written villain, and perhaps the most honest of the of any Avatar villain. He was probably the one villain who was the most forward with people, the most, you know, open about what he wanted and what his endgame was. He didn't anyone. And oh my gosh, the way Zahir kills the Earth Queen, oh my gosh, that was freaking dark! That was freaking dark! I was just, at that point I was like, this is a kid show, right? Well, like I said, I know it's matured a bit, but darn, that was dark. That was freaking dark. Well, what he intended to do to Korra, what he tried to do to Korra, that was freaking evil. That was evil. I know he's a villain, of course he's evil, but that was evil. Like when he's poisoning Korra, when he's basically killing Korra, it really gets you feeling like, how dare you? That's my Korra! Obviously I'm being funny there, but you know what I'm saying. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked Amon, he was freaking terrifying, and I liked Kuvira as well. Like, they were both well-written villains as well. I'm just saying, Zahir, out of any villain in the Avatar franchise, like, hands down, I think he is the best-written one. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. My thoughts on the whole Korrasami thing. I'm gonna say this, Korrasami, I'm honestly alright with it. I really am. I think they handled it very well. I know the build-up to it was subtle and felt a bit forced to some people, and that's fair enough if you thought that, but I'm actually okay with the fact that it happened, and they handled it really well. It didn't like get in the way of any of like you know, the storytelling or anything like that. It was just something subtle in the background. It was very well handled. It didn't come off as anything pervy or anything. It just seemed to occur naturally. Now, you know, I have seen some people make the argument that it was pandering. It was just to show their support of gay relationships, gay marriage and whatnot, because it was the hot topic of the week. That is a fair argument. I will say that is an okay argument, but the fact is, the Avatar franchise has always commented on, like, real-world issues. Like, since Aang's era, they have always commented on real-world issues. And thrown in their personal views and comments on these actual issues. That's nothing new to the franchise, so I don't see how that can be different with a same-sex relationship. Okay, so it's alright for them to show their support of mixed-race marriages, but not gay marriages. And it's not even a marriage, really. It's just two people of the same gender who happen to be starting a relationship. Anyway, regardless of whether Korrasami was a good idea or not, I'm actually happy that Korra was an endgame. This isn't because I'm some rabid Korrasami fanboy who's like, oh, they're totally touching butts right now. No, it's not because of that. It's because, I personally feel that these days, especially in Western animation, it's really crammed down young people's throats that first love is the true love, and that's the person you're going to end up with. That's it, that's the be-all and end-all. When in fact, in real life, it doesn't actually work like that. At least not all the time. And, you know, I think it was good of them to show that while you can really care about someone, and heck, maybe even really love someone, sometimes you just don't work as a couple. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes you're better off just being good friends. I think that's a very important lesson to young people, and that's why I'm glad that Korra wasn't endgame. I do have a message for both sides of the Korra versus Korrasami debate. Well, first of all, stop getting so worked up, it's a blinking cartoon. Second, like, to the Korra people, well, basically everything I just said, you know, sometimes, you know, you can really care about someone, but it doesn't work out. You need to accept this. You need to accept that that's going to happen in real life, that sometimes heartbreak is unavoidable. And to the Korrasami people, just because they're in a same-sex relationship does not mean they are having sex constantly. It's like, do you understand how same-sex relationships work? It's not actually all that different from an opposite gender relationship. It's just that they both happen to be the same gender. They'll still go through all the phases of building up their relationship before they feel comfortable enough to be together in that way. For crying out loud, Korra and Asami aren't animals. They both have way too many moral values to be doing it as rapidly as some people think they are. But yeah, I'm personally okay with Korrasami, and I think both sides of this argument need to calm down, because at the end of the day, it's just a cartoon, guys. It's just a cartoon. There's more important things in the world. Whether you agree that Korrasami was a good decision or not, you know, the fact is, it's a decision. And really, has it ruined the franchise for you? Really, Korrasami changes everything that happens. It takes away all the great storytelling, all the amazing action scenes, all the great character development, all the wonderful things explored. It really erases all of that, does it? It was really that easy for that to be erased for you. Well, I guess you didn't like the franchise that much to begin with if it were that easy. And to the Korrasami people, let's cut the Korra people a little bit of slack, shall we? Because they were, you know, hoping that things would resolve themselves. I mean, it's not even that they didn't resolve themselves, it's just they didn't resolve in the way that they had hoped. I mean, like I said, I'm personally happy that their relationship didn't start up again, because I thought it would have been a bit cliche if it had, but, you know, there were some people who were really hoping for it, so, you know, let's be a bit sympathetic, but Korra people, chill out. It's just, you know, everything up to that point was still great. And it's not as if Korra and Marco's relationship is like, you know, has suffered any sort of damage in any way, because at the end he tells her, you know, he's still got her back, he's still her bro. You know, so it's not like things are bad between the two of them, so that's something. Anyway, I just wanted to weigh in with my own personal thoughts on Legend of Korra as a whole and this whole Korrasami issue. Keep in mind this is just personally what I think. You're perfectly willing to disagree with me. Let me know what you thought of the whole Korrasami thing and the great divide of Makorans and Korrasami-ists. Don't know how to pluralize this. Let me know what you personally thought. I'm not trying to be controversial in what I say. I'm really not. You know, the side of me that used to do that is long since gone. Yeah, I've grown out of that now. I'm really not trying to be controversial. I'm just giving my personal views. Perfectly okay to disagree with me. Perfectly okay. But let's try and keep it calm and mature, shall we? Anyway, that's just all I wanted to say, so I'll see everybody later.